DNI Ratcliffe is pulling the rug from under leakers. Barack Obama gives LeBron James and others a talking. And speaking of LeBron James, he believes black people are terrified of police. I think he should speak for himself. Portland mayor believes President Trump has caused all the hate. And last but never least, Sarah Palin gets the thumbs up to sue New York Times. This just might be the decade of suing these major networks and newspapers directly into the ground. So let's get started. And welcome back to the Daily Facts. All right. So Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, is the man for the job, in my humble opinion. If you recall, during the impeachment hearings, Ratcliffe questioned one of the top staffers, David Holmes. David Holmes worked for, he worked at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. And this was back in November of 2019. And there was a single exchange that sealed the deal for me. And I knew he was a true bona fide warrior, Ratcliffe. So let's watch.
With that, Mr. Holmes, I want to turn to you and the part of the conversation, your testimony where you said you heard President Trump say, is he going to do the investigation? And Ambassador Sondland said he's going to do it. He'll do anything you ask him to. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
What did President Trump say next?
He said, good, what about Sweden?
Okay, now, a person who's confident in their testimony isn't going to be nodding their head back and forth and making weird faces. That exchange was very strange to me. And it just wouldn't occur with somebody that's confident in what they're testifying. But let's continue, because it gets better.
He said what?
Sir, sorry, I need to look at back where we are in the middle of the conversation here. Where are we from the testimony?
This
right.
is
Okay, if you're prepared to testify and you're before the Senate, then you know that you're going to get some hard-hitting questions. And someone really should have sat down with Mr. Holmes prior and said, look, when the Republicans come around with their questioning, they're going to ask you some really tough questions. So just be on your P's and Q's. And if nothing else, you need to have a poker face. And this individual doesn't have a poker face and didn't practice his poker face. Let's continue.
Right. Exactly. So then they turned to the Sweden conversation.
What did President Trump say next?
He said, good, what about Sweden?
Good, what about Sweden? Good, what about Sweden? Why isn't that in your statement?
Sir, it's not a word for word, every single word in the conversation.
Well, considering the seriousness of the impeachment hearing, right, and inquiry, it should be word for word. And you're trying to impeach a president. You're trying to remove a sitting president from office. So it needs to be accurate. Let's continue.
But it's the most important part of the conversation.
Well, then they turned to Sweden. They turned to the other topic.
Respectfully, Mr. Holmes, this impeachment inquiry is based on the call the day before where President Trump, as part of a bribery scheme, as part of an extortion scheme, as part of a quid pro quo, according to the Democrats, demanded investigations in exchange for either military aid or a White House meeting. And the next day, you were witness to President Trump receiving word that the bribery scheme was successful, the extortion scheme was successful. And his response, was, good. What about Sweden?
Yes, sir.
I find that just as remarkable as Representative at the time, Ratcliffe. I find it remarkable too, because let's just keep going. It's ridiculous. This is this is what President Trump has been accused of, conspiring with the Russians. right? And when he received this news, you would have thought he would have reacted differently. And that is what Representative Ratcliffe was trying to point out. So let's continue.
The Ukraine portion of that conversation was extremely brief.
What was the first thing the president said on the call?
Okay, did you see the reaction of David Holmes? Look at his face now. It's like, are you really asking me that? I don't know. I don't even think I'm telling the truth. How would I know? Okay, he doesn't know. Now, this is a once in a lifetime sort of thing. And look at Ratcliffe. He's like, I gotcha. Come on.
This was clear. You had a clear recollection of this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ratcliffe, please allow Mr. Holmes to answer.
Yes, sir. Sondland greeted the president.
How?
He said, he said, hello, Mr. President, I'm in Ukraine, I'm in Kyiv. And the president said.
Did you see that gesture? Like, both of them. David Holmes doesn't know what he's saying. He's lost. He's off script. He has veered off into a neighborhood that he is afraid, deathly afraid of. And Representative Ratcliffe is keeping it going.
Are you in Ukraine?
You think he said, I think you're in Ukraine? He said what?
He said, are you in Kyiv, Ukraine?
What did you hear President Trump say about ASAP Rocky?
I did not hear President Trump's side of the conversation about ASAP Rocky.
You said, how did we go from the conversation was very loud and his voice was recognizable to, as you say here, when the conversation shifted, I could only hear Ambassador Sondland's side of the conversation.
Yes, sir. As I have testified, the initial part of the call, Ambassador Sondland, sort of when the president came on the call, he sort of winced and held the phone away from his ear.
Now, I don't know why he's got his hand up like he's holding a phone, but at any rate, he's just digging a deeper hole for himself. It's just getting deeper.
For the initial portion of the call. And then at some point in the call, he stopped doing that. And I don't know why. I don't know if he turned the volume down. I don't know if the president spoke more quietly. I don't know if he got used to the volume. I don't know what changed.
What did change? It's important. This was memorable.
I don't know, sir. It was Ambassador Sondland stopped moving the phone away from his ear. That's
Exactly. This is memorable. This is a once in a lifetime thing for anybody to experience. This is a sitting president that you are trying to impeach. And you are unsure about it's on its face, it's ludicrous. Let's keep going.
That's what it was?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my moment right there. Let's see if we can just back it up a little bit. You got to see it again.
Okay.
Watch Ratcliffe. See his face? He's like, you're lying. You're not being truthful. And he knows it.
How did the conversation end?
I only heard Ambassador Sondland's side of the conversation, sir. And at the end of the conversation, he said,
okay. I think we have seen enough of this, right? So Ratcliffe was recently on Maria Bartiromo's show, and he dropped a few bombs. So let's go over there to that article. Okay. John Ratcliffe says he filed crimes reports over leaks of classified intelligence. Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, says he has made multiple crimes reports related to leaks of classified information. Ratcliffe, a former Texas congressman who has overseen the nation's 17 intelligence agencies since May, also defended his decision to shift election security briefings from in-person to in writing over concerns about leaks and politicization during an interview with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures on Fox News. So let's listen to a little bit of this exchange.
Since being sworn in as Director of National Intelligence on May 26th, John Ratcliffe has made China one of his top priorities. He has seen more raw intelligence than anybody in the country, except for President Trump. He joins me now live for his first interview since becoming DNI. Director Ratcliffe, it's an honor to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Maria.
So a lot of conversation about you and your latest moves. Let's talk about that.
Okay, now we're going to get into why he has done what he has done.
You gave a briefing to all of Congress on July 31st. The very next day, we all saw headlines about Russia meddling in our economy, which has been the case for several decades. Tell us why you're making this change to change the way you brief Congress on security matters.
Okay, so he's changing the way that Congress will be briefed on security matters. And this is huge because we know this is one leaky government. I mean, they just put out, it's amazing how they get away with it. But I guess they protect one another and they put people in office that's going to continue the protection. So it's like they have several cushions. All right, but let's hear what DNI Ratcliffe has to say.
Sure. Well, Maria, when I went through confirmation, people watched that. They heard me make a couple of promises. One of them was to always follow the law. The other was that I would do everything I could to protect the unauthorized disclosure of classified information, allowing people to leak it for political purposes. The action that I announced yesterday is entirely consistent with that. I reiterated to Congress, look, I'm going to keep you fully and currently informed as required by the law, but I also said we're not going to do a repeat of what happened a month ago when I did more than what was required at the request of Congress to brief not just the oversight committees, but every member of Congress. When I did that, Maria, I said, my only condition is that you treat this information with the respect that it deserves and you keep it private.
And we all know what happens, you know, to the information. They don't keep it private. They leak it, which is why they're called leakers. Leakers. Let's continue.
And yet within minutes of that, one of those briefings ended, a number of members of Congress went to a number of different publications and leaked classified information, again, for political purposes to create.
Now that's something a child, a petulant child would do. That's something a spoiled kid would do, knowing that they have the backing of their parents or whomever. They're not going to get in trouble. They're just going to do as they please. But there is a new sheriff in town, and it's DNI Ratcliffe. Let's keep going.
Create a narrative that simply isn't true, that somehow Russia is a greater national security threat than China. So I'm going to continue to keep the promises that I made. I'm going to continue to follow the law. I'm going to continue to keep Congress informed. But we've had a pandemic of information being leaked out of the intelligence community, and I'm going to take the measures to make sure that that stops.
Okay, I don't think we need to hear any more from DNI Ratcliffe. I trust and believe that he will do the right thing. I've watched him, and you know, the video that I started with is when I really fell hard for his mind and how he operates and the questions he asks. He's a sharp man. And I think that we're going to see a lot of really great things coming from Ratcliffe. So from DNI Ratcliffe. So just, you know, prepare yourself, hold on. So like I said, he is the man for the job and someone to watch. Now, someone I never believed was the man for the job was former President Obama. He was out there giving advice to NBA players. So let's see what he had to tell them. So Barack Obama encouraged LeBron James, Chris Paul to resume postseason after walkouts. I never quite understood why sports was political, and it's political more and more in the last decade from what I can see. I mean, it's just become a hotbed of politicization, and former President Barack Obama isn't helping. He's out there giving advice to some of the top players. Well, the top players he's giving advice to, namely LeBron James, he's someone who loves to talk politics. He brings it into the game every chance he gets. So let's just read a few sentences of this. Former President Barack Obama praised the Milwaukee Bucks for their decision to stage a walkout in response to the Jacob Blake shooting earlier this week. And speaking of the Jacob Blake shooting, we don't have all the facts. But Barack Obama has always been irresponsible in that way, shooting off his mouth about things and not letting the investigators investigate. So, he's out there defending Jacob Blake for all intents and purposes. All right. Obama spoke with LeBron James, Chris Paul, and a small group of players late on Wednesday night and advised them to return to the court to finish the postseason. James and Paul, who is the president of the Players Association, wanted to seek Obama's advice on how to move forward after a contentious, emotional players-only meeting on Wednesday night. A meeting that James, the Los Angeles Lakers, and Clippers reportedly walked out of, wanting to end the season completely. Well, why didn't you? Just end it. That way we don't have to look at you. Why don't you just become a politician? You will probably not be very good at it, but, nevertheless. So evidently Barack Obama was able to turn the tide, and they're going to get back out there. Well, hooray, hurrah. But speaking of LeBron James, he believes Black people are terrified of the police. Let's take a look at this. This is shocking. He doesn't speak for all Black people, so I don't know why he's, speaking now. LeBron James says Jacob Blake's shooting shows why Black people are terrified of police. The NBA superstar also said, I think firearms are a huge issue in America, as they are not only used for hunting for sport. For Black people right now, we think you're hunting us, he said. Well, I disagree. NBA superstar LeBron James spoke out about the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, saying it shows why Black people are terrified of the police. But the police, if Black people had an arrow on their back, a target on their back rather, then you would hear about this. There would be so many stories about Black people being shot. You wouldn't even be able to keep up with it. No, that's not true. James also said in a post-game interview Monday night that he believes firearms are a huge issue in America. Oh, really? But see, you are worth what, $500 million? So you could buy a police department. You could buy a security organization and have round-the-clock security. So it's people like you that really don't have any business talking about this, but it is your, it's your First Amendment right to do so. But I would just say, think about it, right? So, yeah, there you go. What more can I say? Now, our next individual could actually use some friendly advice, and that would be Mayor of Portland, all right? Yes, the Mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler. He has some serious problems, and his constituents are not in love with him. Okay, they really want him to either say you're going to defund the police by, I think, 2022 or leave. So Portland mayor excoriates Trump. It's you who have created the hate. Okay, well, I strongly disagree. What has President Trump done? How has he fueled the hate? When George Floyd, this is when it all really kicked off, was the shooting and the death of George Floyd. President Trump didn't shoot George Floyd. So what are you, okay, but let's get into this article. The Democratic mayor of Portland, Oregon, said Sunday it is President Donald Trump who created the hate in an unyielding attack on the White House following a shooting at a protest that left one person dead. Speaking at a news conference, Mayor Ted Wheeler asked, do you seriously wonder, Mr. President, why this is the first time in decades that America has seen this level of violence? I recall during Barack Obama's presidency, there was a lot of violence and there were a lot of police shootings. So maybe you want to pull your stats and put those forth before you make such a bold accusation. It's you who have created the hate and the division. It's you who have not found a way to say the names of Black people killed by police officers, even as people in law enforcement have. I recall him talking about George Floyd. I recall him saying his name, and, you know, he wanted justice. And it's you who claim the white supremacists are good people, he continued. No, he did not say they were good people. You need to have, I mean, this is just unfair. For people that don't know the truth, they're going to read this and be aghast. President Trump said white supremacists are good people? No, he did not say that. Your campaign of fear is an anti-democratic as anything you've done to create hate and vitriol in our beautiful country, in our beautiful country. Your state, your city is burning to the ground. What is beautiful about that? Well, like I say, Mayor Wheeler is in a bit of a pickle. He's got problems, and he can come out all day long and claim that President Trump is the reason for all of this uprising, but he's delusional, right? He's delusional, and he probably knows that. So we're going to move on to something that I think is pretty good, and that is Sarah Palin gets libel trial against New York Times. Now, I personally believe that the New York Times and all of these newspapers are going to be sued into the ground. I mean, this is going to be the decade of suing these major media corporations. They're going to be sued into the ground. They're going to be done. I mean, the Sandman kid, right? He just settled for, I think, a couple of organizations, CNN definitely. And Washington Post is, I don't know if it's pending or if he just won that. That's the Covington school kid who the Indian fellow got in his face and played that drum really loud. It was really disrespectful. So let's get into this. A federal judge rejects the paper summary judgment motion and sets a trial for February. So good for you, Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin will proceed to trial against the New York Times next February, pandemic permitting. On Friday, U.S. District Court Judge Jed Rakoff rejected the paper summary judgment motion in a big libel case over an editorial about gun violence. The New York federal judge concludes that she had provided enough evidence to establish actual malice on the part of the paper's former op-ed chief. Okay. This is interesting. The editorial linked one of Palin's Political Action Committee ads to a 2011 mass shooting that severely wounded then Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. James Bennett, the writer of the editorial, wanted to make a point about a climate of political incitement, but the New York Times quickly made a correction, acknowledging that no link had been established between Palin's ad and the shooting. And I remember that it was huge at the time. So this is a huge win, and I believe that she will win. Now, notably, Bennett resigned as opinion editor in June after a controversy over publishing an opinion piece by U.S. Senator Tom Cotton that called for a military response to civil unrest in American cities. That article spurred a rebellion by much of the paper's staff. Bennett later acknowledged that this piece hadn't been edited carefully enough. Oh, well, they're going to start saying that, using that excuse, but they best come up with a better one, because it's not going to end with the Sandman kid from the Covington's high school or Sarah Palin. It's going to keep rolling. So they better, save some pennies, because they're in trouble. All right, that's it. Thanks for stopping by the Daily Facts. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll talk again soon. Bye.